welcome back. Today we're going to be learning about if and else statements. If and else statements are going to be conditionals. So basically, they're going to be letting us set some conditions, some statements that need to be true for us to do some action. So they're usually used in if statements and also loops, like for loops. They usually have this inside. So they are very helpful for programming. And let's start learning them. So you're probably already a little bit familiar with it, but if not, I'm gonna explain you. An if and else statement always has to start with the word if. So to start the entire statement, you have to start with if. If, and then you're gonna give it a condition. Some condition that needs to be true for your program to do some action. Like in here, in this case, we have if B is larger than A. So if this is true, then go ahead and print B is greater than A. So let's start coding a little bit. Let's say I have two numbers. I have A equals to 5, sorry, and B equals to 10. Okay? So now I want to check if A is smaller than 10, I'm gonna print, sorry, not that, well, yeah, we can also check that. A is smaller than 10. We can also do smaller than B. Or if B is larger than A, I want to print B is larger than A. So as we can see, these two conditions are true, and that's why our program is printing whatever we are telling it to. If it was not true, for example, if we're checking if B is smaller than A, that's not true. Our program is not going to do anything. So what this is giving it, it's checking a condition and it gives the program on the back a true or a false. And it will use that to decide if it's going to do the next action. Okay? So let's now talk to the next part. So we need to talk about the words else. So let's start with else. What happens with whatever is not true on that condition when, and we also wanted to do another action if that condition is not true. For example, if B is greater, sorry, if B is smaller than A, and you tell it print B is smaller than A. But if this is not true, I want to do something else. If this is not true, I want to print B is larger than A. Okay, so what are we going to be doing in this case? First, our if statement is going to check if B is smaller than A. If that's true, it's going to print whatever we have in here. But if it's not true, it's not going to print this and it's going to go to the else. So whatever, all the conditions that are not these conditions, this condition in here that we define in here are true, it's going to do the action down here. So in this case, as you can see, B is 10, A is 5. B is not smaller than A. So it is completely skipping this one and is going to the else and printing the rest. So remember, else it's going to take all the other conditions that you don't define on top and take an action. If you don't want to take an action, if you just want to check a condition, you just do it in this way. You don't need to define the else. But what happens if I want to define, instead of just one condition, two conditions, right? Check this one first, and if this one is not true, then go ahead and check this other one. So that's when you start using elif. So elif, it's going to be to check if the previous condition is not true, then check this other condition. And you can still have your else to take like whatever it's not true in those two previous conditions that you just defined. So now let's see an example. Okay, so let's do this exercise. Let's say I have two numbers. A is 100 and B is 50. Okay? So I wanted to, if A is larger than B, then I wanted to print A is larger than B. But if A is smaller than B, I wanted to print A is smaller than B. But I can also have both of them being equal, right? So in that case, I'm going to print A and B are equal, right? So let's run this. Right now, A is 100 and B is 50. So in this case, A is larger than B. Okay, so that's what we see. But what happens now if A is 10 and B is 50? So now you can see A is smaller than B, right? Because 10 is smaller than 50. And if I change this one to be the same, now it should be printing whatever we have in the else. A and B are equal, right? So basically what is happening here is it's first going to be checking this condition. If this condition is true, then we're going to be printing something. If this condition is not true, then you're not going to be printing anything in here. What it's going to do is just automatically jump to the next one and check if this condition is true. If it is true, then it's going to print this statement. But if it's not true, then it's going to go to the next one and check if it's true. So anything else that is not true on these two will be printed on this last statement. Okay? So those are like the basic examples of if and elif. So if every time you want to check a condition, you just have to define if your condition and then some action that you want to do if that condition is true. Elif is whenever you want to have multiple conditions. So now let's look at a couple examples on some other ways you can write an if and else statement. So here we're telling if and then the condition and then elif and the condition. But another thing you can do is just say print A and then you can state your condition after that. If A is larger than B, else you can print B. So now in this case, we put the action first, and then we start defining our conditional. Again, to start defining our conditions, we always have to use if. So we start with if A is larger than B. So if this is true, we're going to be doing this. But if not, we're going to be doing B, printing B. So in this case, my A is 50 and B is 50. So we're going to be printing B. If I change this one to be 100, now we're going to be printing A because now A is larger than B. Okay? Another way that you can write it, like just to save space, it's if A is larger than B, and you can put it on the same line. Print A is larger than B. Okay? So that's a different way that you can write it down. So there's one more thing. So what happens if I want to check that two conditions are true at the same time? So for example, let's say I have A equal to 100, B equal to 50, and C equal to 10. So now in this case, we're going to be checking that two conditions must be true at the same time. For example, if A is larger than B, but at the same time, A is larger than C, I'm going to print, for example, A is the largest number. Number. Okay? So in this case, what we're going to do here is that this condition has to be true, but this other condition has to be true at the same time for our program to print whatever we have down here. Okay, so let's run it. Now, in this case, we have A is larger than B and A is larger than C because A is 100 and that's larger than B and A is larger than C. So now we're going to be printing this statement down here. Okay? So that's another example. In this time, both conditions have to be true for a program to print or to do whatever action we put after that. There's another way where you, instead of checking that both of them are true, you can give it two conditions and then you say, if one of these is true, then do the other action. And that is with the or. So in this case, if A is larger than B or A is larger than C, you're going to print whatever like you put there. In this case, A is the largest number still. But now in this case, we just need one of these conditions to be true. So let's say, for example, our C now is going to be 1,000, so it's not going to be larger than the 100. But A is still going to be larger than B. So let's change this because that's not true anymore. Ay. Condition is true. So now, you see, A is larger than B. This one is true because 100 is larger than 50. Or A is larger than C. In this case, A is going to be smaller than C. But since this condition is true and we're using the or, then it is going to be still working. Okay? So just like for you to get an idea how you can define if and else statements. So remember, we're going to start with an if. If we want to check multiple conditions, we're going to be using if. Else it's going to encompass everything else that was not defined in your previous conditions. And that's basically it. If I want to define two conditions at the same time, if I want to check if two conditions are true at the same time, we can use and. And if you just want one condition to set true, but it can have two possibilities, you can use or. Okay? So I hope this helps you. Again, the best way to learn Python and programming is practice. So please go ahead, start practicing, do all of this exercise, play a little bit with it and get more familiar with programming and Python. That's going to help a lot. If you have any questions or you have any comments, please leave them below. Thank you.